The rain fell hard that morning. Emma stood by the graveside, her black dress soaked, her hands trembling. The only sound was the priest's quiet voice and the occasional sob from her younger brother beside her. Her father was gone. The man who raised her, protected her, taught her how to ride a bike, was now just a memory and a casket in the ground. She didn't cry, not because she didn't want to, but because her heart felt numb. She'd flown back home 2 days ago when she got the call. "He's gone, Emma. He had a heart attack." She hadn't even gotten to say goodbye. The funeral was small. Her father had no savings, no big house, no car, just kindness. He worked at the local school as a janitor for over 20 years. He'd raised Emma and her brother on his own after their mum left. Now, it was just the two of them. After the service, Emma walked quietly to her car, her heels sinking into the wet ground. She checked her phone. 10 missed calls. Her heart sank, all from her boss. Her chest tightened. She had called in to explain. She thought they'd understand. She had told them, "My father died. I need 2 days to attend the funeral. I'll be back after." She returned to her apartment that night, tired, grieving, her eyes burning from holding back tears. As she opened her inbox, her world shifted again. Subject: termination notice. Emma, due to your unauthorized absence and failure to follow protocol, we are terminating your employment effective immediately. Your final paycheck will be processed next week. She stared at the screen. No warning, no compassion, just a cold email. Emma dropped her phone on the bed and sat in silence. She had been with the company for 5 years, never late, never caused trouble. She had trained new hires, led projects, and even worked late nights for deadlines that weren't hers. And yet, this was how they treated her. Fired for burying her father. Tears finally came, not just for her father, but for everything. The job she gave her soul to, the life she'd been trying so hard to build, all of it crumbling with one email. She felt like nothing, like she didn't matter. But in that silence, something shifted in her. They fired her for being human, for grieving. One day, they would regret it. They just didn't know it yet. Emma was 29 years old. She had grown up in a small, quiet town with her father and younger brother, Caleb. Life had never been easy for them. Their mother left when Emma was only 10, and from that moment on, their father became everything. He worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. He never complained. He never gave up. Emma had always admired him. He didn't have much, but he gave her and Caleb love, discipline, and strength. She was the smart one, the planner. She studied hard, won a scholarship, and moved to the city to study business. Her goal was simple: make enough money to take care of her family and give her brother a better chance at life. After graduation, Emma got hired at a fast-growing tech company called Axis Point. She started at the bottom, doing basic reports and admin work, but she worked her way up. Her manager, Claire, seemed impressed by her. Emma often stayed late to finish projects. She rarely took days off. She didn't party or waste time. Her life was work, rent, and sending money home to Caleb, who was now finishing college. Emma had no boyfriend, no real social life. Her co-workers sometimes laughed about her being married to the job. She just smiled and kept working. But behind the smile, she was tired. Her apartment was small and quiet. Every night she came home alone, heated up leftovers, and tried not to feel the loneliness in the walls. She missed her dad's voice. Even though they talked on the phone, it wasn't the same. She missed sitting in the kitchen with him, talking about life. At work, things had changed lately. A new boss, Mr. Grant, had taken over the department. He was cold, focused on numbers, and didn't know anyone by name. He pushed hard for results, and didn't care about personal problems. Emma noticed how people were walking on eggshells around him. Claire, her direct manager, had changed too. She seemed more distant, always passing pressure down to Emma. Whenever things went wrong, Emma took the blame, but she didn't speak up. She thought if she just worked harder, things would get better. Then her dad passed away. She had sent the company an email asking for leave, but no one replied. She left anyway, thinking they'd understand once she explained. She even called Claire and left a voicemail, but she never heard back. Now she was jobless. Caleb didn't know yet. He had exams, and she didn't want to worry him. She told him she'd be back at work soon. That was a lie. Emma sat on her small couch the next morning with a mug of coffee that had gone cold. She looked around the apartment, her bookshelf full of business books, a small plant she kept forgetting to water, her laptop still open to job search websites. She had only a few $1,000s in saving. Rent was due in 2 weeks. She had no plan, but something kept burning in her chest. a mixture of grief, anger, and a deep sense of injustice. She gave everything to that company. She covered for co-workers, solved problems, mentored interns, and they threw her out like trash. She thought about her father again, how he always told her, "Never let people treat you like you're nothing. You know your worth." Emma didn't feel strong, but she knew she couldn't just sit there. She had to figure something out, not just for her, but for the part of her heart that still believed in herself. And that's when the idea came. She didn't know how, she didn't know when, but one day she was going to own something, not just a little business, something big, and maybe, just maybe, she'd get the chance to show those people at Axis Point who they had really fired. They didn't know it yet, but the woman they cast aside was going to rise. The days after losing her job were heavy and long. Emma applied to several companies but didn't get any calls back. Her savings were going fast. Rent was due soon, and she didn't even have enough to pay all of it. Caleb kept texting her about his final exams, and she kept replying with short messages like, "All good," or "I'm just resting a bit." She didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. One morning, Emma walked to the coffee shop near her apartment to use their Wi-Fi and apply for more jobs. As she waited for her drink, she heard two women behind her talking. "I heard Axis Point is going public next year," one woman said. "Yeah," the other replied. "They just brought in that new CEO. He's planning a full restructure. A lot of people might get laid off." Emma froze. Her stomach turned. Axis Point, the company she gave everything to, going public. That meant they were going to make millions, maybe billions. The people at the top, like Mr. Grant and Claire, would get huge bonuses. And the ones who built the company from the ground up, forgotten. She left the shop without her coffee. Her head was spinning. They didn't just fire her. They got rid of her just before the company's biggest payday. Later that afternoon, she checked her old work email. She still had temporary access. She hadn't thought about it before, but now she logged in, her fingers shaking. Dozens of emails were still coming in. Most she ignored, project updates, meetings, reports. But then she saw something that made her stop. Subject: Confidential Equity Report for Executive Review. Only it was from Claire. Emma opened it. The file listed the names of top employees who would receive stock options once the company went public, bonus amounts, equity shares, names she knew, some who barely worked, some who had only been there a year. Claire's name was at the top. Mr. Grant, of course, then others. No Emma. She scrolled and scrolled. Her name wasn't there. Even though she had led major projects, fixed broken systems, trained entire teams, she wasn't even listed. They had known for months. That's why they pushed her out. She wasn't in their plan. Tears filled her eyes. Not from sadness, but from pure anger. Emma sat for hours, staring at that list. All those years, she worked like her life depended on it. She had skipped birthdays, stayed in the office till midnight, eaten dinner at her desk. All for nothing. They had used her. And when she became inconvenient, they fired her like she was nobody. She thought about her father again, about how he gave everything to his job too. He retired with no savings, no pension, no thanks. Just a small goodbye card. That night, Emma didn't sleep. Her eyes were swollen, and her heart felt like it was burning. But somewhere in the middle of that pain, an idea took shape. Something bold, something wild. She remembered something from years ago, an elective class she took in college called Startup Law and Private Equity. It was just one semester, but she remembered the professor saying, "Every business has a price, even if it's not for sale. If you know the right people and understand the structure, you can own it from the inside." Emma got out of bed and pulled out an old notebook from her college days. She flipped through the pages until she found her notes. Legal structures, company ownership, silent partners, proxy shares, investor shells. She didn't know everything, but she knew just enough. If she could find the right investor, someone who could buy shares quietly, someone willing to help her become a silent owner, she could get back in, not as an employee, but as someone who couldn't be fired again. The next day, she called someone she hadn't spoken to in years, Mr. Howard, her old professor. He was surprised to hear from her, but kind. She explained what had happened, the funeral, the firing, the list, her idea. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Emma, this is bold, but I know someone who might want to help. He invests in undervalued tech companies. If you show him what you just told me, and if it makes sense, he might go for it. But this isn't a small move. This is war. Emma nodded, even though he couldn't see her. I'm ready, she said. They used me, and they think I'm gone. But I'm not. I'm coming back. And for the first time since the funeral, Emma smiled. Not because things were okay, but because she had a reason to fight. Emma met Mr. Howard's contact 3 days later in a quiet cafe downtown. His name was Victor Lane, a sharp, calm man in his early 40s. He listened as Emma explained her idea, how Axis Point was about to go public, how they secretly fired her to remove her from the equity list, how the company had grown because of people like her who were now left behind. Victor didn't speak much. He took notes, asked a few smart questions, then finally leaned back in his chair. I like your fire, he said, and I like the numbers, but I'm not going to invest just because you're angry. This has to make business sense. Emma nodded. It will. Give me 2 weeks. I'll show you everything. She spent the next 2 weeks gathering everything she could. Old reports, internal data she had saved, company weaknesses that only she knew. She stayed up all night studying, building presentations, writing reports. It felt like going back to school, but with real stakes. Her future depended on this. Victor reviewed her plan and called her one evening. You were right, he said. This company is undervalued, but it's strong. If we move quietly, we can buy enough shares to control the board after it goes public. You'll be our silent face inside, but this has to stay quiet. Emma agreed. They formed a small shell company with Victor's team. Emma would not be listed by name. She became what's called a ghost owner, a person with full influence but hidden behind legal walls. As weeks passed, Emma watched from the outside as Axis Point celebrated its new growth. The company shared pictures on social media, new offices, new staff, even Claire smiling at company dinners. No mention of Emma, no trace of her anywhere. It hurt, but she held on to her secret. Until one evening, Emma ran into a former co-worker named Nina at the grocery store. Nina looked shocked to see her. Emma? Oh my God, where have you been? Claire told everyone you quit because you couldn't handle the pressure. Emma blinked. She said that? Nina nodded. Yeah. She told the team you walked out without notice, that you left your projects in a mess. Everyone believed her. Emma's hands went cold. None of that is true. I figured, Nina said softly. I knew you wouldn't do that. But Claire's in tight with Mr. Grant now. They've been acting like they built everything. Emma smiled weakly and changed the subject, but her chest was burning. Back home, she opened her laptop and scrolled through Claire's LinkedIn profile, posts about leadership, smiling team pictures, proud update, lies. She realized Claire didn't just let her get fired. She made up a story to protect herself. And Mr. Grant? He was using that story to keep his record clean for the investors. Emma felt sick, but now she had more fuel. This wasn't just about getting her job back. This was about setting the record straight. She messaged Victor. We need to speed things up. They're rewriting history. Victor called her. Then let's make our move. I just bought another round of shares this week. When the company goes public next month, we'll control 51% of voting rights. You'll have the power to step in. Emma thanked him, but her hands were shaking. The next few weeks were torture. She had to keep everything a secret. She couldn't talk to Caleb, couldn't tell Nina, couldn't warn anyone. She watched her enemies smile and win, knowing she was about to flip the table. But silence came with a cost. She started having trouble sleeping, nightmares, anxiety. She missed her father more than ever. He would have known what to say. He would have told her to stay calm, to stay strong. But he wasn't here. She was alone. One night, Caleb called her sounding upset. Emma, I found something online. Someone from Axis Point made a post. Claire, I think. She joked about how some people cry over funerals instead of careers. Is she talking about you? Emma froze. Her throat went dry. Caleb didn't know everything, just that she had left her job. I don't know, she lied. People say stupid things online. Caleb was quiet. Emma, are you okay? She tried to sound calm. I'm fine, just tired. But Caleb wasn't fooled. If someone hurt you, I want to know. Emma's voice cracked. I'm okay, Caleb. Really. Just focus on your exams. She hung up and cried for an hour. Everything was closing in. The lies, the betrayal, the silence. Even the people she loved were getting pulled into the mess. She had one final meeting with Victor before the public reveal. They sat in a small office, reviewing the final ownership papers. When the company goes public, Victor said, your voice will be heard. You'll have control. But I need to ask one last time. Are you sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back. Emma looked at the paper. Her name wasn't on it, but everything inside it was hers. Her revenge, her justice, her voice. I'm sure, she said. They buried me like I was nothing. But I'm still here. Victor smiled. The morning Axis Point went public. The office was filled with excitement. Claire wore her best suit. Mr. Grant gave a short speech. Staff clapped and cheered. It was their big moment, years of work, and now the company was about to be worth millions. They had done it, or so they thought. At exactly 11 a.m., the company received an urgent notice. A large investor had just taken controlling interest. Over 51% of the company's voting rights had been transferred to a private firm named Blue Wave Holding. No one had heard of it before. Confused, Mr. Grant called an emergency board meeting. Claire was already panicking. She had heard whispers about silent takeovers before, but never thought it would happen here. When the board gathered on the top floor, Mr. Grant looked tense. "We need to find out who these people are," he snapped. "This is not a joke." A moment later, the door opened. A woman walked in. Emma. Silence filled the room. Claire's jaw dropped. Mr. Grant looked like he'd seen a ghost. Emma walked slowly, calm and steady, holding a folder in her hand. She placed it on the table. "I believe you've all been expecting someone," she said. Claire stood up. "What is this? What are you doing here?" Emma looked directly at her. "I'm here because I now own controlling interest in Axis Point." Laughter broke out from one of the board members, but it stopped when Emma opened the folder. Inside were legal documents showing her connection to Blue Wave Holdings, proof of her position, her name, her power. Mr. Grant's face turned red. "This is some kind of stunt." "No," Emma cut in. "This is justice." She turned to Claire. "You lied about me, told everyone I walked away, that I left my projects in a mess, that I couldn't handle the pressure, but we both know why I left. I was at my father's funeral, and while I was burying him, you were planning how to erase me." Claire tried to speak, but Emma raised her hand. "You took everything I gave to this company and threw me out. You sent a termination email without even looking me in the eye." Emma's voice shook, but she kept going. "You thought I'd disappear, but I didn't. I learned, I fought, and now I'm back, not to beg for a job, but to take back what I built." Mr. Grant slammed his hand on the table. "You can't just walk in here and make demands. You don't understand how this works." Emma smiled. "You're right. I didn't, but I do now." She turned to the board. "I will be making several changes immediately, starting with the leadership team. Mr. Grant, your services are no longer required." Gasps filled the room. Mr. Grant stood up, furious. "This is illegal." Emma pointed at the documents. "It's legal. It's signed. It's done." She then looked at Claire. "You too." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Emma, please. We were friends. I didn't mean—" Emma's face turned cold. "We were never friends. You just needed someone to do your work." Claire sat down, speechless. The board remained silent. No one stood up for them. No one defended them, because deep down, they all knew. Emma was right. She turned to the rest of the room. "This company was built by people who gave everything and got nothing. That ends now. I won't run it with fear. I won't fire people for grieving. From this day, we build something better." Her voice was calm but strong. Every word hit hard. She picked up the folder, nodded once, and left the room. Outside, she took a deep breath. The sky was bright. The air smelled like freedom. She didn't feel powerful. She didn't feel like a queen. She just felt free, finally. And for the first time in months, Emma smiled. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of peace. After that day, everything changed. Emma didn't fire everyone. She didn't shout or humiliate people. She simply did what needed to be done. Mr. Grant and Claire were officially removed from their positions. Their contracts were reviewed, and the lies they told were made public within the company. The people who had stayed quiet before now whispered the truth behind closed doors. Everyone remembered how Emma used to work late, help others, and stay calm during chaos. Now they saw her in a new light, someone strong, quiet, and deeply fair. Emma was offered the role of CEO, but she turned it down. She didn't want to sit in an office all day. She chose to stay on the board instead, guiding big decisions, helping shape the future, but not letting the job swallow her life again. She hired new leadership, people who cared, who listened. She created a new policy, paid family leave for grief, mental health support, and anonymous reporting for unfair treatment, things she had needed but never received. Her story spread online after a reporter wrote about her quiet takeover. The article went viral. Fired for attending her father's funeral, she now owns the company. The title alone caught fire. People from everywhere sent her messages. Some told her they cried reading it. Others said they finally had the courage to quit their toxic jobs. Emma didn't care about fame, but she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Seen, heard, respected. She called Caleb and finally told him everything. He was quiet for a long time on the phone. "You did all that?" he said. Emma smiled. "Yeah." He was proud. Dad would have been too. More than proud. Emma looked at the small picture of her father on her desk. "I hope so." For the first time in months, she slept well. No more nightmares. No more waking up in fear. The weight that had lived in her chest slowly lifted. Day by day, she felt like herself again. Strong, focused, and grounded. She still lived in the same apartment, but she made small changes. New curtains, a plant she watered regularly, a couch pillow that said, "Keep going." It wasn't much, but it felt like home. Sometimes she walked past the Axis Point office building, not to check in, but just to remember, to remind herself how far she had come, from fired and broken to powerful and calm. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she refused to let anyone tell her she was nothing. One Friday evening, as the sun went down, she sat on a park bench with a coffee in hand. Kids played nearby. Dogs ran on the grass. The world moved softly. A woman sat beside her, maybe in her 40s. She looked tired. "I know you," the woman said quietly. "You're Emma Gray, right?" Emma nodded, a little surprised. The woman smiled sadly. "I read your story. I was fired too, after I lost my son. I thought I'd never recover, but your story gave me hope." Emma didn't know what to say, so she just nodded and said, "I'm really sorry for your loss." The woman wiped a tear. "Thank you, and thank you for showing that we can still stand, even when life breaks us." Emma looked at her and softly replied, "We don't stay broken forever. We just bend, but we come back." The woman smiled again and walked away. Emma stayed there for a while longer, watching the sunset. It was quiet. It was peaceful. She wasn't rich with money, not yet, but she had something better, power over her own life. She didn't let the company define her anymore. She defined herself, and that was worth everything. 1 year later, Emma stood at her father's grave with fresh flowers in her hand. The sky was clear, and the wind was gentle. She knelt down, placed the flowers carefully, and touched the cold stone. "Hi, Dad," she whispered. "I did it." Her eyes filled with quiet tears, not from pain this time, but from something softer, peace. "I wish you were here to see it. They fired me for being at your funeral, but I didn't let them win. I didn't break. I came back stronger, and I made things right." She sat beside the grave for a few minutes, letting the silence wrap around her. "There's still a long way to go," she said, "but I'm not scared anymore. You taught me how to stand up, and I finally did." Before leaving, she pulled out a folded note from her pocket and placed it by the flowers. It read, "You didn't leave me empty. You left me strong." Emma stood, took a deep breath, and looked around. The world hadn't changed, but she had, and that was enough.